Hi, this is Chris Webb at Colorado State University, and I'm going to talk to you today about minimum wage and its effects on unemployment. I'm going to go through a few slides here, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the purpose of my research. I wanted to show that there are some ties to minimum wage and unemployment, but also what I wanted to show you was that oftentimes the people who are advocating for minimum wage laws actually hurt those who the laws are intended to help. So we're going to kind of take a look at that in a few minutes here, over the next few minutes, excuse me. So what about the history of minimum wage? Well, it started here in the United States in 1938. Ever since then, it's been debated about whether it helps or whether it hurts different people, and the research backs both debates. Sometimes it shows that it helps, sometimes it shows that it hurts. I am under the opinion that it does cause more unemployment after the minimum wage laws are enacted. And we're going to look at some economics to kind of see why I have that opinion. But then when we look at the results, we're going to see if there are any diverging views. So let's go ahead and, real quick before I forget to mention this, we're going to take a look at Chicago and Seattle, and we're also, at the end, we're going to talk about the long-term effects of unemployment based off of some of the research that I've done here. So we're going to look at a 101 view, Econ 101, to kind of take a look and see what minimum wage looks like. So really quickly, let's take a look at this graph here. It's a basic supply and demand graph. And if this is you can see it right down here, it's the quantity of labor. So basically, people who are looking to get a job, that is the quantity of the people who are trying to get a job is the quantity of labor, basically. What happens is when these two, the supply, which is basically the amount of people who are looking for jobs, the demand is the amount of people who are trying to hire for jobs, when they intersect, that is where it's the equilibrium wage. Oftentimes it's called the market clearing price with any other good. With wages and with labor, they call it equilibrium wage. And that's going to be at L naught. What happens when we have a wage rate above that, a ceiling essentially, what happens there is that now you can see that it's disequilibrium where the amount that the workers are looking for is way over here at L1, and the amount that the employers are looking to spend is way over here at L2. So you have this huge gap where the wage is just not meeting with each other. And that's what we actually call unemployment. So that's just a basic graph to kind of understand where the two diverging views come from. Because you can clearly see that if it's not at the X, basically, that there is disequilibrium and that it's really going to harm the employment rate within the particular city. And we're looking at cities here, but even within the particular country. Speaking of countries, we are going to look at Chicago and Seattle. But before that, I just wanted to get a baseline of some of the other places that actually have some drastically different unemployment laws. But also, I wanted to take a look at how they affected each other based on their location. So Switzerland, it actually has no minimum wage law, and as a matter of fact, the people there voted down 76% that they did not want a minimum wage law, and that happened back in 2015. It has relatively low unemployment, and it's actually one of the most desirable cities to live in Europe. Now right next door is Germany, and you can see I have the graph here again, and what they do is they do something very different, where they understand that at times when the wage is at a certain level, the employers are not going to want to keep the employees. So what happens there is the government actually pays those employers to pay those employees. So basically it's a subsidy to the employer so that the employee can still have that higher wage that they're at when they're typically employed during boom times, is what you call it in economic terms. So let's take a look at the city of Chicago here. Chicago actually raised its rates in 2015, 2016, and 2017. And we're going to look at the initial wage rate here when we look at the unemployment number. As soon as that happened, you can kind of see that the downward trend of unemployment, it's going down at a drastic rate. It immediately levels right off. Now, typically what you're going to see with no action is it's going to continue to go in that downward trend. So we see right here that that the unemployment rate was going down, then it halted all of a sudden based off of that minimum wage law. Now, I had a unique situation because I was actually recently in Chicago and I went to a McDonald's. I didn't get a picture, I wish I did, but I did want to see just kind of what was happening there based off of the minimum wage law. We were on vacation up there, and what I saw was that they actually had kiosks there rather than employees to take orders. So what happened during the minimum wage law in 2015 in Chicago, the employers actually started moving money from the employment of human capital, to technology. Usually technology and human capital kind of work together to supplement so that they're higher producing. But what's happening now is because the prices are going so high in Chicago, they're moving away from human capital and moving into the technological capital. So in Seattle, they actually had a couple different minimum wage hikes. We're going to look at both of them. First, we're going to look at the one in 2015, then we're going to go to the one in 2017. Here's the one in 2015. Again, it's right along the trend with Chicago. Stops unemployment from a downward trend and starts pushing it forward. Although in Chicago, it more flattened it out. But in the second one, something unique happened. You can kind of see it. They anticipated, the business owners anticipated it was going down. Then it shot up in anticipation of the changed law in January of 2017. However, it's been going down ever since, which is kind of odd because we just saw that previously, it's right here, it was going down and then it shot right up. So we're going to take a look really quickly at basically reviewing this and kind of seeing what did we learn. So we know that in the initial Seattle study and the Chicago study, that they both had high unemployment after the minimum wage change. The outlier is the second Seattle number, in which the employment fell after that increase. So now we have to ask a few different questions. Is unemployment tied to minimum wage law? Yes or no? Were Card and Kruger, one of the most cited papers out there, correct in their assessment that there is no net job loss? Well, the previous examples of Chicago and Seattle state that there is net job loss. However, the last example of Seattle shows that it wasn't. So the things that I want to discuss is that one of the things that we learned about the first Seattle study was that employees actually started migrating their jobs away from Seattle based on that minimum wage hike. So if that happened in 2015, it kind of started making the employee saying, wait a second, I need to change my mind and change my actions based off of this employment situation. And then in Chicago, we also saw that technology started changing its role within the employer-employee relationship. Rather than supplementing the employee, what happened was Chicago started replacing the employee. So if there is not a job for an employee to look at, they don't get counted for that minimum wage, or they don't get counted against that unemployment. So the result, I'm going to read the results here really quickly and just give you a brief discussion on it. The two factors do play a significant role in the second study because the fact that people use judgment. They either look for a second job, which keeps the unemployment figure low, or some of the jobs are eliminated by technology. Again, this lowers the unemployment number because there is not enough jobs to be counted as needs to be filled. So the conclusion is that there is a direct relationship between the unemployment and the increased minimum wage loss. However, the raw data does not give a full picture of the employment situation in the United States. What's going to have to happen is we are going to have to start using a better metric in order to measure the unemployment based on the new uses of technology, because technology is getting so inexpensive now. What's happening is when you have an employee who's earning $15 an hour, you extrapolate that over a full year. That is basically the exact same price as a machine if you take that into account the limited amount of maintenance that you're going to need, and the only thing you're going to need for improved production is software upgrades. So there is a direct relationship. We are going to have to start measuring unemployment a little bit differently, because what happens when we do get those technological changes is those jobs actually disappear, and it does actually hurt those people are looking for those jobs, because now they're not getting them. The initial picture on this slide was about raising the minimum wage and not having rungs on the ladder. And that is one of the hardest things that employers can do to make sure that they have those employees, to give them those initial skills. So hopefully this study and this video was able to, and this presentation was able to help you understand the minimum wage laws a little bit more. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you.